subject to start out with?
Well, as you said, I'm a medical doctor here in San Antonio, and was dating a girl who began, or engaged to her actually, who began hearing voices in her surroundings and in her head, responding to those voices without loud conversation. Claimed she was being attacked by things or weapons that she couldn't see. Then her place started getting broken into. She started being drugged with rohypnol, was a date rape drug, and being raped. This is all along with stalking, or now what we term gang stalking. I actually prefer the term organized stalking because with some people you say gang stalking, they picture the Crips and the Bloods and that type of thing. But it's just an organized form of stalking where you have various people that are always around your door, or looking in your windows, or following you to work, or following you everywhere you go. It's an inundation. She began having that, and then I began having it. Began getting followed to and from my home to hers. Started writing the plate numbers down, and they all traced back to a PI group, private investigative group, that is owned by a former FBI agent and the son, who's a retired lieutenant colonel in the DOD, and hired nothing but his relatives to do the stalking and the surveillance work, and started looking more into it, talking to friends of mine that I have that are currently with the CIA and with the FBI to find out exactly how it's being done. I knew a little bit about it already, that they could bombard you with voice-to-skull type technology. The other one is elf-wave broadcasting, where you hear voices in your surroundings, not necessarily in your head, which is what she was getting, was actually getting both. Finally caught them breaking into her place with putting voice-activated recorders in her condominium. Caught her in a drug state screaming their names to get out while they were looking for the recorder, and took it all to the police. And without having enough recall to actually prove the rape, they really couldn't do much with the stalking, and told me that it's not what you know, but what you can prove. So the next step was to write a book and start exposing it. And in writing that, found out that it's going on with thousands of people nationwide, and even more worldwide.
Wow, that is a really incredible story. The fact that you were involved in it directly is, and someone close to you was also impacted, obviously in a very serious way, is really extraordinary. And then that you had the wherewithal not only to pursue the matter, but then you wrote a book about it. What was your background before this?
I did a little bit of work with the government that I really can't talk about, but was exposed to this type of technology in Nicaragua, along with a couple of other friends. At that time, it wasn't being done with satellite, I don't think, but was being done with AWACS planes. And that's where the initial experience was, and then really never didn't think about it again. And actually, I've another doctor, he's not a medical doctor, he's believe it or not, a doctor of divinity or theology, that I do a radio show with, who was also down there, and our paths crossed once again in San Antonio, and I told him what was going on, and he said, well, that sounds like satellite surveillance. And I said, yeah. Has anybody commercialized this? And I got a hold of a friend of mine who's currently with the CIA and said, has anybody commercialized this type of technology where somebody can hire it done from a commercial service, even if you're hiring it from abroad, from England or China or India or somewhere? And he said, no, it's a weapon of war for use abroad only, under strict supervision by executive orders on intelligence gathering. But then why do we have thousands of people in this country that are all voicing the same complaints? It almost looks like it's probably agency sterile experimentation, not unlike MK Ultra. I'm sure you're familiar with MK Ultra, the early mind control experiments by the CIA.
Absolutely.
They used social outliers. I mean, usually the victims were everyday people, some people with drug problems, guys that were using prostitutes, what we term social outliers, people that were already slightly discredited in their lifestyle. So when they did voice these complaints that they had people experimenting on them, they were blown off. They were discredited. And the biggest question I get with this is people say, well, if they can get into your head and make you hear voices and see you inside your home with X-ray imaging and forward-looking infrared imaging, then they would be doing it to heads of state and congressmen and CEOs and in some instances they probably are. But if it's an experimental protocol, that's exactly the people you don't do it to. You do it to the everyday person, the housewife, the guy that's making $40,000 a year, the guy that maybe is using a little bit of marijuana. So that way, when he voices these complaints, they say, well, it's the drug, it's the stress, it's a psychiatric illness, and you're. If you're an everyday person, you're not in any political position or a power position to really do anything about it or get the attention you need. So that's why I decided, need some exposure. There's plenty of people blogging about it on the computer, on the internet, but nobody had really put anything out where a non-targeted person or a person who's never heard about this can pick it up off the shelf at a Barnes & Nobles or Amazon and learn about it. Because knowledge is power, and if you know about it, you know its capability. When you first start being affected by it, you're not going to go run to somebody and say, oh my God, I'm hearing voices, and end up with a diagnosis. It's going to discredit you for the rest of your life.
So, okay, because this is very tantalizing that you actually were involved in something, doing something for the government where you came across a certain type of surveillance that wasn't exactly satellite-based, as you said, but that it was related in some form or fashion to what you came across later. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it was used for communication at that time, radio-free communication. So when people went out into the field, they could be given directions. To my knowledge or to my memory, it wasn't two-way at that time. It was one-way communication to give you directions in a field setting without a radio. You heard it in your head. So it's been worked on for quite some time. In 1996, through Freedom of Information, there's a 1996 article from the Army called the Addendum to the Bioeffects of Non-Lethal Weapons, where they bring it up pretty succinctly as microwave hearing. And in that research study, they even say that imagine the incapacitating results when an enemy combatant begins to hear voices in their head that aren't their own. And they go on to mention the value of this technology in a hostage crisis, where the hostages can be communicated with without the hostage hearing, or the hostage taker being communicated with without the hostages hearing. As a matter of fact, I remember here in Texas several years back, we had the Wake branch to the FBI. So God, they did it, decided.
Right. This is, I have to say, that we're also talking about, literally, you're talking about using voice technology that goes directly to the mind of the person, right?
Yeah, it's called microwave hearing. It was based on the early studies by Dr. Alan Frey. They called it the Frey effect, Frey, or Fry, depending on what country you're from.